I believe we have to analyze what's left for our revolution to accomplish. What are the Jewish national aspirations that have not yet been achieved? What are the obstacles standing in the way of us achieving those goals? And how can we be the historical characters that smash those obstacles? Now, I personally have arrived at some conclusions. I don't believe that other people have to adopt my conclusions. I want people to go through the process and come to their own conclusions, and I certainly don't mind if they come to the same conclusions as me, but I'm really only sharing my own conclusions in order to provide examples of what I'm talking about. I have so far identified the goals of this generation as being three very specific, intersected Jewish national goals. Number one, the decolonization of Jewish identity. Number two, freedom from the United States. To be an independent country, not to take American money, not to take American weapons, and certainly not to take American orders. Not to be an outpost of Western civilization in the Middle East. And this takes us to the third goal, to be an organic part of the region, to have peace with the Palestinians and with the broader Middle East. I've dedicated a lot of my work to the achievement of these three goals. And when we talk about peace, because I think peace is the specific goal I'd like to focus on right now, I see three major obstacles to us achieving peace with the Palestinians. Number one, discussion about a two-state solution. All talk about a two-state solution prevents conversations about solutions that could actually work. It's a waste of time, it's a waste of money, and it's actually a waste of human lives. Because as long as we continue to discuss a two-state solution on a diplomatic level, on a policy level, we are preventing real solutions from being explored. The second obstacle I see preventing us from being able to improve the relationship between our people and the Palestinians here is that both sides feel threatened by the story of the other. We're afraid to legitimize the story of the other because we fear that if their story is true, our story is somehow less true. And the third obstacle I identify to peace with the Palestinians is the insistence of Israel's ruling class to be part of the West and not the Middle East, along with the insistence of the Palestinians and the broader Middle East to view us as part of the West and not the Middle East. This is a barrier to us being able to achieve peace here. Part of what I do and what I've created is a movement that's viewed as an alternative peace movement. And people often ask, why are we considered alternative? What is alternative about what we do? And first of all, in order to understand why we're an alternative peace movement, we have to accept the fact that for all intents and purposes, peace activism or peace movements in Israeli society are almost exclusively associated with a very specific sector of the Israeli population and very specific solutions. Or a very specific solution. So we're alternative in three ways. Number one, we circumvent the peace industry. For those who don't know what the peace industry is a derogatory term on the Palestinian street and on the Israeli street that often refers to those who work for European-funded NGOs that make more money, higher salaries than the average person in the country, and push a solution that has failed and couldn't succeed, hasn't succeeded, and in my opinion shouldn't succeed. We circumvent the peace industry, we circumvent the international community, and we completely reject the two-state solution. That's number one. Number two, we don't believe that peace between Israelis and Palestinians can be achieved through bringing the westernized diplomats from both sides together to sign an American piece of paper. The quote-unquote moderates from Tel Aviv and from Ramallah can get together. They can sign all the American pieces of paper they like, but it will not achieve peace between us and the Palestinians, certainly not between people like me and my Palestinian counterparts. Those who need to be empowered as representatives of our respective peoples need to be the quote-unquote extremists. Those who are living the aspirations of their people. Those who are willing to fight, to kill, and to die for that which they believe to be important to their people. Because if they can make peace, the rest of us fall in line behind. The rest of us are able to accept and trust that peace. And number three, we're alternative because we don't believe that peace in the Middle East can be achieved by forcing each side to compromise on something that's deeply important. The only way that we could achieve peace is through creating the conditions for both peoples to experience victory in the respective stories we're living in. And for us to be able to achieve that, we need to very carefully analyze and explore the core grievances and aspirations of both peoples. You know, I'm a student of Rav Kook, and Rav Kook teaches in Ma'amar Dat Elokim that we very much live in our perceptions of reality. Each of us is really the main character of our own movie. We're the protagonist of our own movie. And even right now, we're all having very different experiences. This experience we're all sharing because we're objectively all together in the same room. We're playing cameo appearances in each other's movies. And for the last 100 years, the Israelis and Palestinians have been living in two completely different movies. And we've been experiencing two completely different conflicts. And as a result of the fact that we're experiencing two completely different conflicts, and we both feel threatened by the narrative of the other, by the story of the other, we end up fighting our fantasies of the other. We end up superimposing identities and ideologies and motivations on the other that are very out of line with how the other experiences himself. We're both doing it. And just to give you an example of how counterproductive this is, you know, the Hamas strategy against Israel, for the most part, is based on the assumption that we are all European colonialists here. That Israelis, Zionists, are a bunch of Europeans who happen to share a religion, constructed an artificial national identity out of that religion, and used it to colonize Palestine. That is their accusation. And therefore, they employ anti-colonial tactics against us, as if we're the French in Algeria or the Americans in Afghanistan. They want to make the price of occupation more expensive than the benefits of exploitation. That is essentially the tactic, because they believe that if they could make the price of occupation more expensive than the benefits of exploitation, we will leave. And it works. That is a tactic, an anti-colonial tactic that works. We did it to the British. We made it not worthwhile for the British to stay in our country. We made the price of occupation more expensive than the benefits of exploitation. The problem is, we Israelis completely self-identify as belonging to this land. We don't believe we have anywhere else to go. So when they use those tactics against us, we respond like an indigenous people with superior firepower that feels threatened. And they don't achieve their desired result. But we're both doing this because we're both fighting the fantasy of the other. So my role as a peace activist is really to create a bigger story, a bigger narrative, that's inclusive enough to encompass both ostensibly rival narratives, so that we could become protagonists together in the same story moving forward. But again, this is one of the goals that I've identified for our generation moving forward. This is a goal of Jewish liberation that I've identified. I'd really like to leave it up to you to formulate your own ideological framework and goals for the Jewish people moving forward. Thank you.